सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ आप्यायन्तु ममाङ्गानि वाक्प्राणश्चक्षुश्रोत्रमथो बलमिन्द्रियाणि च सर्वाणि सर्वं ब्रह्म उपनिषदं माहं ब्रह्म निराकुर्याम् मा ब्रह्म निराकरोत् अनिराकरणमस्त्वनिराकरणं मे अस्तु। तदात्मनि निरते यौपनिषत्सु धर्मास्ते मयि सन्तु ते मयि सन्तु। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। ओमित्येतदक्षरमुद्गीतमुपासीत ओमिति ह्युद्गायते तस्योपव्याख्यानम्। We saw this sutra, Atmani Chaivam Vichitraschahi Apicha Naivatra Viveditavyam Katham Ekasmin Brahmani Swarupa Anupamardenaiva Anekakara Srushtisyaditi. How can it be that Brahman, which is one without a second, that there is a whole Srushti of the creation which is variegated creation? How can in one Brahman there can be variegated creation without Brahman giving up its original nature? Swarupa Anupamardenaiva. It is understandable that one clay can turn into many pots and pans when it gives up its Swarupa. It no more remains lump, it becomes the pots and pans. That is possible if there is a potential of this multifariousness in clay. But without giving up it, how can something be upadana karanam, material cause, without giving up its original nature? Na vivaditavyam, that vivada, the dispute should not be there. Yataha atmani api ekasmin asvapna drshi swarupa anumardenaiva anekakara srushti pathyate. Because we read in the Upanishads how in one swapna, in one dreamer, there is the anekakara srishti, there is the srishti having many forms and many shapes in the dream. न तत्र रथाः न रथयोगाः न पंथानो भवन्ति. In reality, there are no chariots, nor horses, nor the roads or the paths. Atha, and still, so स्वप्ने रथादीनां भावे कथं तत्प्रथा. If the chariots are not there in a dream, how can we see the chariots and the horses? Atha rathan rathayogan pathah srujate. A dreamer creates the chariots and the horses and the roads in the dream. Lokepi devadishu mayavyadishu cha swarupa anuvardeneva vichitraha hastyashvadi srushteha dushyante. In our day-to-day life, a magician does this. From the Shastra, the scriptures, we understand that Devatas are able to create without changing or without giving up their true nature, original nature, able to create the variegated creation. तथा एकस्मिन्नपि ब्रह्मणि स्वरूप अनुमर्देनैव अनेकाकारा सृष्टिः भविष्यति. As in case of the dreamer, as in case of a devata, as in case of a magician, it is possible that in Brahman also, even though Brahman is one, anekakara srishti, the variegated creation can take place. Then we go to the next sutra, 30th on the page 403. Says न्याय निर्णय पूर्वाधिकरणे ब्रह्मण विचित्र शक्ति युक्तत्वात् युक्तम कारणत्वम इति उक्तम. पूर्वाधिकरण, in the previous अधिकरणम ब्रह्मण विचित्र शक्ति युक्तत्वात्. We also read here on the page 397, न तस्य कार्यं करणं च विद्यते न तत्समश्चाभ्यधिकश्च दृश्यते परास्य शक्तिः विविधैव श्रूयते. अस्य ब्रह्मणः पराशक्तिः विविधा एव श्रूयते. Brahman is possessed of the variegated powers, variety of powers within himself. Swabhaviki, the Shakti is not acquired, it is inherent. Jnana bala kriya cha, there is the power to know and power to will, power to act. So Purvadhikarane Brahmana Vichitra Shakti Yuktatvad, because Brahman is possessed of the variegated power within it himself. Yuktam Karanatvam Vidhi, the Brahman can be Jagat Karanam, the cause of the creation, the material cause of the creation. Idanim tasya vichitra shaktitve pramanamaha. So where do you find that Brahman is possessed of variegated power, pramanam? Where is the evidence in the Shruti? So then comes the next sutra, Sarvapeta. सर्वोपेता च तद्दर्शनात्. सर्व उपेता च तद्दर्शनात्. च अपि सर्वोपेता. This is feminine. Devata is a feminine word. Therefore, सर्वोपेता सर्वशक्ति युक्ता सर्व उपेता युक्ता सर्वशक्ति युक्ता para devata, the supreme deity is possessed of all the powers. Kutaha, on what basis do you say that? Tad darshanat tasya sarva shakti yogasya sarva karma sarva kama ityadi shrutau darshanat. That's what we find in the Shruti. Shruti says that sarva karma sarva kama, possessed of all the actions, possessed of all the desires, etc. Meaning Shruti describes Saguna Brahma. Maya Shabalam Brahma is described as possessed of all the powers. Says Ratnaprabha, Maya Shaktimato Brahmanah Jagat Sargam Vadatah Samanvayasya. Slowly, Maya Shaktimatah Brahmanah Jagat Sargam Vadatah. That Brahman, Maya Shaktimatah Brahmanah. Brahman endowed with the power of Maya. From that Brahman, Jagat Sargam Vadatah Samanvayasya. That's what? That Brahman, as we said yesterday, can become the cause of creation only from the standpoint of Maya. And so, in a primary sense, Brahman becomes the cause of creation when Brahman is possessed of Maya. In a secondary sense, it is Adhishthanam. That way, it becomes the cause of creation. So that is the Samanvaya. That is the purport arrived at in the first chapter. Now there is the logic again. Asharirasya na maya iti nyayena virodha asti nava natasya karyam karanam cha vidyate. Brahman does not have a body, nor does it have sense organs. Therefore, Asharirasya na maya iti nyayena virodha asti nava. A magician possesses maya or the power of magic, but magician is a body. How can Brahman possess maya without having a body? Meaning, can an entity without having body, can an entity possess maya or not? Asharirasya na maya iti nyayena virodha asti navaiti. Because Devata also has Sharira, a magician also has Sharira. So whoever is heard as possessed of special powers certainly has a body. And Brahman doesn't have a body. So can it be possessed of Maya or not? Iti sandehe nyayasya anavasatvat. Purva Pakshi says that Nyaya is not an abhasa, it is a Nyaya. It's a rule that applies everywhere. It is not a rule that is only a partial rule or only an apparent rule, appearing like a rule. It is a rule that is applicable everywhere. Asti. So Virodha Asti. To claim that Brahman with Maya is Jagat Karanam. He is opposed to this logic that which does not have body cannot have Maya. Purvokta Shaktimatva Samarthanad Eka Vishayatvam Sangatim Vadan. Purvokta Shaktimatvam. The previous adhikaranas talked about Shaktimatvam, Brahman possessed of all the Shakti or power. That's what they said. Tasya Samarthanat. This sutra does Samarthanam. This sutra in fact supports that. This sutra provides the pramanam for that. Therefore this sutra and this adhikaranam and previous adhikaranam have the same subject matter. Therefore Eka Vishayatvam Sangatim. So what's the Sangati? What's the connection that this Adhikaranam has the previous Adhikaranam? Eka Vishayatvam. Sometimes different kinds of Sangatis are there. Same Udaharanam Pratyudaharanam, or sometimes there is a Shanka. So different kinds of Sangatis are there. Here Eka Vishayatvam, same Vishaya is there with the previous Adhikaranam. Siddhanta Sutram Vyachaste. This is a Siddhanta Sutra, not a Purva Paksha Sutra. भाष्यकारः एकस्यापि इत्यादिना एकस्यापि ब्रह्मणः विचित्र शक्ति योगात् उपपद्यते विचित्रः विकार प्रपंचः इत्युक्तम् पूर्वाधिकरणे. It is uktam to say in the previous adhikarana, previous topic. Ekasyapi brahmana, even though Brahman is one, vichitra shakti yogat, on account of being endowed with the variegated power, upapadyate vichitra vikara prapanchaha. Upapadyate. It is tenable that from Brahman such as that, this variegated creation can emerge. This was stated. So that was the subject matter of the previous adhikarana, which is also subject matter of this adhikaranam. Pramana prashna purvakam tad upanyasa sutramadatte. That this sutra is an answer to this question, what's the pramanam? Pramana prashna purvakam. What is the pramanam? What's the evidence you have in saying that Brahman is possessed of variegated power? Tadupanyasparam. This sutra provides the pramanam. Sutramadatte tat punah. So, Bhashyakara explains the sutra with a question. Tat punah katham avagamyate vichitra shakti yuktam param brahmeti. Tat punah, that again, katham uchyate, on what ground do you say? Vichitra shakti yuktam param brahmeti. That param brahma is possessed of the variegated power. On what ground do you say that? Bhashyakara taduchyate. That question is being answered. Sarvopeta cha tad darshanat. Sarvopeta, the Supreme Deity, is possessed of sarva. That sarva comes from the Shruti, Sarva karma, sarva kama, sarva gandha. That's why Bhashyakara gives that quotation. There are many statements in Upanishad describing Brahman possessed of Shakti, but why this particular passage is quoted? Sarva, sarvopeta. Sarva Shakti yukta cha paradevata iti abhipagantavyam. We have to accept that Paradevata, Supreme Deity, Brahman is possessed of Sarva Shakti, all powers. It is omnipotent, possessed of all the powers. That is what we have to accept. Kutaha, again, what makes you say that? So kutaha tad darshanat. Kutaha, on what ground do you say that? So Brahman is so possessed of all powers? Tad darshanat. This is what we find in the Shastra, in the Shruti. Ratnaprabha said, Purottara Pakshayoho Virodha Virodho Phalamidi Uktameva Apada Samaptehe Avagantavyam. Purva Paksha Uttara Pakshayoho. Purva Paksha says there is a Virodha. that Brahman can be the creator or possessed of Maya is opposed to logic that which doesn't have body cannot have Maya, and that's what Purva Pakshi says. Uttar Pakshi says no, even though Brahman is not possessed of Maya, it does, not possessed of body, it is possessed of Maya. So virodho phalam. Virodha avirodho phalam. Whether nyaya, this opposed to nyaya or not opposed to nyaya, that will be the result. Iti uktameva apada samapte, up to the conclusion of this quarter. This is the all along. The Purva Pakshi presents a nyaya and Uttar Paksha and shows that there is your contention that Brahma is Jagat Karanam is opposed to some nyaya, some reasoning. And Vedanta then shows it is not opposed. That's the trend that follows up to the end of this quarter. सिद्धांत हेतुम नानाविध श्रुत्यवष्टम्भेन विवृणते. सिद्धांत हेतुम सर्वोपेता सिद्धांत हेतु तद्दर्शनात् नानाविध श्रुति अवष्टम्भेन, based on a variety of shrutis, vivrunati, Bhashyakara explain that tad darshana, that's a hetu, that vivrunati, Bhashyakara elaborates with the help of many statements from the Shruti. Tatha, so Bhashyakara says, Tatha hi darshayati Shrutihi Sarva Shakti Yogam Parasyaha Devatayaha. Tatha hi darshayati Shruti, Shruti shows accordingly. Sarva Shakti Yogam Parasyaha Devatayaha, the Supreme Deity shows as possessed of the Sarva Shakti Yogam, possessed of all the powers. That's what the Shruti shows. Sarva Karma Sarva Kamaha Sarva Gandha Sarva Rasaha Sarvamidam Abhyataha Avaki Anadaraha. This much. So Sarva Karma, Brahman is possessed of all the karma, all the good karma. Sarva Kamaha, Brahman is possessed of all the desires. Sarva Gandha, possessed of all the good desires, all the good smells. Sarva Rasa, possessed of all the good taste. Sarvam idam abhyataha abhitaha vyaptaha. Abhi attaha vyaptaha. So abhitaha vyaptaha. Brahman has pervaded all this from all sides. Brahman has pervaded all this from all sides. Avaki, Vagindriya Shunya, devoid of the organ of speech. So, even though not possessed of body, possessed of power, this is the statement here. Avaki, doesn't have organ of speech, stands for all organs. Brahman doesn't have any organs and still possessed of all the desires and all the actions and all the taste and all the smell. Anadaraha, what is anadaraha? Anadaraha, nishkamaha, has no asakti at all, devoid of all the kamana. Then further, the next page, Satyakamaha, Satyasankalpaha. Satyakamaha, whose desires are unfailing. Satyasankalpaha, whose resolve also is unassailable. with unfailing desires, unassailable resolve. Then further, Yas Sarvagnya Sarvavita. Sarvagnya, all knowing in general, Sarvavit, all knowing in particular, meaning possessed of all knowledge, all desires, all will. Then, Etasya va aksharasya prashasane garge Surya chandramaso vidhrutau tishthatah. Says Yajnavalkya ji, he Garge, etasya vai aksharasya prashasane, under the mighty rule of this akshara, immutable. Surya chandramaso vidhrutau tishthatah. The sun and moon also are held in their respective position. Gama vishyaja bhutani dharayam yahamojasa. Entering the earth, I sustain, I support all the beings by my power. Similarly, by the power, so in the mighty rule, by the mighty power of the immutable Lord, the sun and the moon are held in their respective positions. Meaning that he is possessed of all the power. So, that Brahman, even though doesn't have body, still has all the powers because it is possessed of Maya. Go to next Adhikaranam. He says, Na prayojanavatvat. Another question is, it's a Purvapaksha Sutra. Look at page 400. Na prayojanatvat. Anyatha punah chetana kartrutvam jagatah akshepate. Again, Purvapakshi presents a nyaya. In each case, anyatha, in another way again, chetana kartrutvam jagatah, that jagat is the creation of Brahman, that is consciousness, is again questioned in another way. Na khalu chetana paramatma idam jagat bimbam vireshutum arhati. That Paramatma, who is a conscious being, cannot possibly create this sphere of universe. Kutah, on what basis do you say? Why do you say that? Prayojanavatvat pravuttinam. Because prayojanam anuddishya namandopi pravartate. That even a dull-headed person will not initiate any activity unless there is a purpose to serve. So this is a huge undertaking. There must be some purpose. And so prayojanavatvat pravrittina. Chetano hi loke buddhipurvakari purusha pravartamanah na mandopakramapi tavat pravrittim atma prayojana anupayoginim arvamano drishtah. That in the day-to-day life we do find that a conscious person who is intelligent, who deliberates before acts, So, buddhipurvakari, a person who deliberates before he acts. Purusha pravartamanah na drishtah mandopakramamapi tavat pravrittim. Something that is easy of performance in that pravritti also we do not find an intelligent person, thinking person engaging. Atma prayojana anupayogini, that does not serve a purpose for his own self. Nobody undertakes that kind of an activity. Nobody is seen to undertake that kind of an activity. Kimuta gurutara samrambham. Whereas this was a stupendous activity of this creation, and how can it take place without any purpose on the part of the Creator? Creator should have some purpose to create. And this is a huge, and small little thing you may just do without any purpose, but this huge thing you cannot do without a purpose. Bhavati cha loka prasiddhi anuvadini shrutehi. And Shruti also very confirms this. It is something which is well known to people. Shruti doesn't say this. Shruti only does anuvadini Shruti. reiterates what is already well known to the people. Navare sarvasya kamaya sarvam priyam bhavati atmastu kamaya sarvam priyam bhavati. That things are not dear for the sake of themselves, they are dear for the sake of one's own self. So one's own interest always comes in. Gurutara samrambhachayam pravrutti yat uchchavacha prapancham jagadbimbam virachayitavyam. That this is a pravrutti, a stupendous task which involves the creation of high and low things. यदि इमापि प्रवृत्ति चेतनस्य परमात्मन आत्म प्रयोजन उपयोगिनी परिकल्प्येत. All right, we said okay. So Ishvara has created this universe with certain purpose. Why not? What's the big deal about it? Suppose you give that much ground, then all right. Since this is a general rule that nobody does anything without a purpose for one's own self, okay, Ishvara has a purpose. Paritruptatvam paramatmana shruyamanam badhyeta. And so, but Paramatma is described as Purnamadaha, Purnamidam, Paritruptatvam. So Paramatma is Paritrupta, is contained in every way. When there is contentment, there is no desire, there is no purpose at all. So if you impute a purpose to Brahman, then Brahman's Paripurnatvam, the fullness or wholeness, will be contradicted. Meaning one thing cannot be simultaneously totally content as well as desiring. Desire is an expression of discontentment. Brahman is totally content. How can there be desire? How can there be purpose? Prayojana abhaveva pravrutti abhavopi syat. If there is no prayojanam, then there is no pravrutti. Then suppose you give another explanation. Atha chetanopi san unmattah buddhi aparadhat antareneva atma prayojanam pravartamano drushtah. We say that sometimes even a conscious being also is seen to be engaged in activity without any purpose when unmattah, an intoxicated person, a deluded person or intoxicated person or a mad person. We see that person engaging in activity which does not serve any purpose. So that is possible. The Brahman also is like that. Brahman is unmattam, mad or intoxicated. Why not? Suppose you give an explanation. Paramatma bhi parvartishyate iti uchcheda. So that Paramatma also engages in activity that way. Tatha sati sarvajñatvam Paramatmana shruyamanam badhyeta. But Paramatma is yes sarvajñah, sarvavid. He is all knowing. How can all knowing Paramatma be mad, intoxicated? He is always apramatta, always alert. Tasmat ashlishta chetanas. How beautiful one by one questions are taken up here, you know. All questions that normally arise in anybody's mind are all taken up one by one. Tasmat ashrishta chetana srushti. Therefore, from Brahman, this creation is there, is incongruous, ashrishta. Siddhanta iti. Siddhanta Sutra is the next Sutra, 33. Lokavattu Leela Kaivalyam. Tu Purvapaksha Nirasartha hai. That Lokavattu, that tu is for refuting the Purvapaksha. Lokavata Yatha Loke Raja तदमात्यादीनां फलं विना एव केवल लीलारूपाः प्रवृत्तयो दृश्यन्ते. Just as in our day-to-day life, Raja, a king, Amatya, his counselor or his minister. Amatyadinam phalam vinayeva kevala leela rupa pravuttayo drishyante. Even though Raja is complete in every way, all his needs are satisfied, and still you find that a king or Amatya engages in sportly activities. Kevala leela rupaha, merely a pastime, leela. So they are seen to engage in activities which are mere pastime and not meant to serve any purpose for themselves. Yathava uchvasadaya svabhavadev utpadyanti. Bhashyakara adds, Yathava uchvasadaya, or breathing in and breathing out, how these activities also take place in a conscious being without any purpose to be served. Tatha brahmana vichitra karya rachana leela kaivalyam. Similarly also, this vichitra karya rachana, this creation of the variegated universe, is merely leela kaivalyam, leela matram. Nothing but a sport, nothing but a pastime. Na phalasapeksham, not intended with any intention, with no intention of any personal benefit in that or any purpose to serve. Atah samanvayo na viruddhya. Therefore, the samanvaya is not contradicted by the logic presented by you. Say Ratnaprabha, uktanyayasya rajñam leelayam vyabhicharaha. So what is uktanyaya? See Ratnaprabha, last line on the page 404, Sakim abhrantah chetanah yassah nishphalam vastu narachayati iti jnayena. So what's the rule that they are now bringing here? Abhrantah chetanah, a conscious being who is abhrantah, who is not deluded, who is not intoxicated, who is in his right mind, who is conscious, fully conscious. Sa nishphalam vastu narachayati. A person who is thinking and conscious is not seen to create anything without a purpose. So that's the rule. Whether Brahman's creation is opposed to this rule or not, So uktanyayasya rajñam leelayam vyabhicharaha iti. Uktanyayasya, that a thinking or intelligent being does not engage in any purposeless activity, is that there is an exception to that rule in case of the pastime of the king. So in every case we show the exception, and that his rule is broken. That's all we are saying. Nothing else is said. So whatever, because the buddhi is based on logic, and this logic comes up with variety of objections. And so every objection is answered one by one. Iti Siddhanta Sutram Vyachaste. So Siddhanta Sutra is explained Bhashyakara tu iti. Tu shabdena akshepam pariharate. So lokavattu, so by tu, the akshepa, the accusation or the question, the doubt is resolved here, or the accusation is refuted here. Look at Nyaya Nirnaya. Yattu sakshat paramparaya va swaprayojan abhavat na brahma jagat karanamiti. See, without a purpose, not only you do not do, but you don't ask somebody to do. Sometimes you don't do things, but you prompt somebody else to do. Like Lord Krishna does not fight the battle. Tasmad yudhyasva bharata. But then he is not instigating but prompting Arjuna to fight. That is why people see purpose in Lord Krishna's teaching also. That it is to serve the individual purpose that he made Arjuna to fight the battle. So not only a person does not do things himself, but does not make somebody do also unless his own purpose is to be served. So swaprayojana bhavat, but Brahman doesn't have any prayojan like that. Therefore, na Brahma jagat karanam, therefore Brahman cannot be the cause of creation. Tatra sukhollasa nimitta kridayam uchvasadav cha. Sukhollasa nimitta kridayam, the pastime that are taken purely for the purpose of relaxation or for the purpose of enjoyment, or better than that, uchvasadina uchvasadav, or in the breathing out, etc. Phala visandhi abhavat, no purpose. In sport also there is no purpose. Nowadays there is a purpose that we have to win, but otherwise that is called sport, which is played for the sake of playing, which is played for the sake of enjoying the play. Nowadays it's a fight, so it is a fight to finish kind of a thing, but that is not the idea of the sport. Anaikantiko hetu, therefore your hetu is not ekanta, it is not an invariable rule, there is an exception to that rule. Yatha, Bhashyakara says, Yatha loke kasyachit aptaishanasya rajnyah rajamatyasya va vyaktiriktam kinchit prayojanam anabhisandhaya kevalam lila rupaha pravruttayah क्रीडा विहारेषु भवन्ति. Yatha loke, just as in the day-to-day life, kasyachit apta eshanasya rajnyah, of a king whose all desires are satisfied. That is why the example of king is given, because king has all the resources at his command, and therefore there would be nothing that he cannot get. Whatever he wishes, he can fulfill, because he has all the resources, he has all the power. That's why the example of king is given here. Aptaishanasya rajnyah raj amatyasya va, or an amatya, or a minister, or a counselor of king also is like that. Vyatiriktam, what is Vyatiriktam? Leela Vyatiriktam. So Vyatiriktam kinchit prayojanam, without a purpose other than merely the sport or the pastime. Anabhisandhaya kevalam leela rupa pravruttayah. You find on the part of the king or the part of the minister activities merely as a pastime. Kevalam lila rupaha pravruttya krida vihareshu. What is krida vihareshu? Krida rupaha viharaha yeshu ramya desheshu teshu ityarthaha. They go to some nice place, some place of natural beauty or natural environment like golf. People spend half a day on the golf course. Swami is a beautiful golf course, is a very beautiful place. Nice, ground with all the lawns and all the contours, surrounded by trees, and a very beautiful. So they enjoy a day in open. They don't mind even sun also. So open air, open sun, and exercise, and company also. It's a man's sport, generally speaking, so men get together, like fishing also. So no women there, and therefore whatever they want to talk, and business, lots of business meetings take place on the golf course. That is why the business people have to know how to play golf, because that is where you meet some potential customers, etc. So krida vihareshu, krida rupaha viharaha yeshu, where all the vihara, all the walking or movement is merely as a matter of sport. Ramya desheshu, in beautiful places. So there, krida vihareshu bhavanti. Thus that's what we find in case of kings, and minister also is a well-paid person. So he also is well content as far as all his needs are concerned, and still we see them engage in the activities for the purpose of pastime in the playfield. So see Ratnaprabha, kadachit rajadinam leelayaha api kinchit phalam sukhollasadikam sambhavyeta. That king or the minister also go to a sport field because they are bored where they are. So sukhollasadikam, therefore they also want some enjoyment. So working for the whole day or being in a palace also, you get a little tired or a little bored, and therefore you want some change. You want something to entertain your mind. So even in the pastime of a king or a minister, it is possible that this kind of a purpose is involved, Kinchit phalam. Some outcome is desired there also. Not that it is totally without prayojanam, purpose. Tathapi nishvasadau prekshavat pravruttitvam asti. But as far as the breathing out, etc. is concerned, there is no purpose served there. Even for a preksha, a wise person also, there is no purpose served there. And still, it is done. Natu swasya tatra uddeshyam phalam kinchit asti. For breathing, you do not go on to entertainment, you do not want prosperity, you do not want any kind of worldly result, the outcome in the act of breathing. Iti vivichara sthalantaramaha. So that rule, that nobody engage into any activity without a purpose for the self, one exception was in the activity, the sport of the king or other vivichara sthalam, other place of exception also is shown here. Yathacha uchvasa prashvasadaya anabhisandaya bahyam kinchit prayojanam svabhavadeva sambhavanti evam ईश्वरस्यापि अनपेक्ष्य किंचित प्रयोजनानन्तरं स्वभावादेव केवलं लीलारूपा प्रवृत्तिः भविष्यति. यथा च उश्वास prashvasadaya, breathing out and breathing in, anabhisandaya bahyam kinchit prayojanam, without keeping in mind any external purpose to be served for breathing in and breathing out. Svabhavadeva bhasambhavanti, they take place by nature. Svabhavadeva, by nature alone they take place. Spontaneously they take place. Says Nyaya Nirnaya, Drishtante svabhavo dehasya pranadimatvam svabhavadeva. It is the nature of the body to breathe in and breathe out. And so it just takes place when it's like that. Dashtanteketu svabhava avidyayate drashtavyam. In case of Brahman, the svabhava is ignorance, and therefore it takes place without any purpose. Ignorance has no purpose, and what is created by ignorance also has no purpose. एवं ईश्वरस्यापि अनपेक्ष्य किंचित प्रयोजनांतरम. And similarly also, Ishvara also doesn't have any purpose, no purpose, personal agenda. Brahman also has no personal agenda. Svabhavadeva, merely by svabhava, spontaneously by ignorance, kevalam leela rupa. Even if king may have some kind of a purpose, Brahman certainly has no purpose at all. Kevalam leela rupa, merely a sport or a pastime. Pravritti bhavishyati. In case of Brahman, that kind of an activity is possible. और से रत्नप्रभा प्राणस्य स्वभावः चलत्वम. न्याय निर्णय से देहस्य प्राणादिमत्वम स्वभावः. The body is possessed of the breathing is the nature, but here it says pranasya swabhava chalatvam. It's the nature of prana to always move. Prarabdham va. For how long will prana go on? As long as prarabdha is. So prarabdham pushyati vapuhu. It is prarabdha that keeps on sustaining this body and prana also. Uchvasadi hetuhu. Ishvarasya svabhava kala karma sahita maya. Nyaya say ignorance. It says maya along with kala and karma. Maya also requires a purpose. So karma is the purpose and kala a time. When the time for the creation comes, then it takes place, and then the purpose is all the prarabdha of the jivas. Says Ratnaprabha, nanu Ishvarasya jagadarshanayaha kevala lilatvam kimiti uchyate phalameva kinchit kalpyatam. Why do you say that Ishvara has no purpose whatever to serve? Maybe Ishvara also has some agenda. Why not? Why not Ishvara also has an agenda? Why should he do only for the purpose of sport or without any purpose? Nahi, so Bhashyakara says, Nahi Ishvarasya prayojanantaram nirupyamanam nyayatah shrutito va sambhavati. Nahi Ishvarasya prayojanantaram. That Ishvara has any prayojan, any agenda other than sport, other than pastime. Nirupyamanam. So when you want to ascertain what can possibly be the purpose or the prayojanam that the Ishvara has, nyayatah shrutitah va na sambhavati. By reasoning also it doesn't make sense that Ishvara is paripurna should have any desire or any agenda, and Shruti also does not describe any agenda for creation, that for this purpose Ishvara created. Says Ratnava, apta kamatva vyaghatat. We cannot assign any agenda to Brahman because Brahman is apta kamam. It is one whose all desires are all fulfilled. And having all desires fulfilled and having a purpose, these are contradictory. So we cannot assign any purpose to Brahman because that will contradict the fact that Brahman has all desires fulfilled, is complete in itself. Says Ratnava, nanu Ishvara tushnim kimidi na tishtati. So why doesn't Ishvara just keep quiet? Just be there. Kimiti swasya aphalam paresham dukkhavaham srushtim karoti. And Ishvara has created a universe which does not serve any purpose for Ishvara, which however is causing all kinds of pain to everybody else. Why does he do that? Why does he keep quiet? Why does he create all this universe which gives so much dukkha to everybody? Tatraha. To that the answer is given nacha iti. Nacha svabhavaha paryanuyoktum shakyate. No answer. Nacha svabhavaha paryanuyoktum shakyate. You cannot question the nature. Why is fire hot? Why doesn't it remain cold? It's nature to be hot, that's all. Why is ice cold? Why doesn't ice have normal temperature? To be cold is its nature. Therefore, you cannot ask a question why with reference to the nature of thing. Nacha svabhava paryanuyoktum shakyate. Says Ratnaprabha, Kala dharmadi samagrayam satyam srustehe अपरिहार्यत्वाद इत्यर्थः. Kala dharmadi samagrayam satyam. When samagri is there, when the requisite material is there in terms of time, in terms of dharma, adharma, karma, so this is the samagri that Maya requires to create the universe. So kala karma, that's what Maya requires. So when that samagri, when does creation take place? When the samagri of kala, when the right time comes. So seed is sown in the ground. It doesn't come up right away. It takes its own time to manifest as a sprout. Similarly, Maya also takes its own time. In Pralaya, it is only hibernating. And then the creation starts when the right time comes, and all the karma, the prarabdha karma of all the jivas also is now ready to express itself. So kala dharmadi samagrayam satyam srustehe apariharyatvat. Then srushti will take place. You can't stop it. When the requisite samagri or the material is there, things will take place. When you bring hydrogen and oxygen into contact, explosion will take place. Water will happen. Or when you bring fire and hydrogen together, explosion will take place. That's the nature. You can't say why it takes place. That's the nature. That's all. So with gunpowder, you apply a matchstick, it will explode. It's the nature of gunpowder. So you can't say why gunpowder, why are you exploding, why don't you keep quiet? You can't say that because it's its nature. Yaduktam, again say Ratnaprabha, Gurutara ayasatvat phalam vachyamede. Here Nayana explains it in different way. Nano Leeladau Asmadadinam Akasmadeva Nivrittehepi Darshanat. So sometimes when we are playing and all of a sudden we stop also. Ishwarasyapi Mayamayam Leelayam. So Ishvara also it is Mayamaya sport or Mayamaya krida or Mayamaya pastime. Tatha bhave vinapi samyak jnanam samsara samuchyati. So why doesn't sometimes Ishvara also withdraw? So when we are playing, sometimes then we stop. All of a sudden, okay, enough. Now it's 5 o'clock, I'm tired, or enough. So sometimes why doesn't Ishvara also enough? Then what happens? Vinapi samyak jnanam samsara samuchitti, then people will be liberated without the true knowledge. So to say it, nacha svabhavaha paryanuyoktum shakyate. Ignorance cannot be removed just like that without the knowledge. Ignorance cannot stop without the knowledge. A darkness will not go without light. When darkness is there, it will stay. All of a sudden, darkness, I am going now. No, darkness will not go. So, unless light comes, darkness does not go. Unless knowledge comes, ignorance does not go. And therefore, there cannot be any kind of stoppage of activity all of a sudden. Continuing in 9 years, yattu jagad rachanayaha gurutara samrambhatvat bhavitavyam phalenaiti. That's what Ratnavar also says, yaduktam gurutara ayasatvat phalam vachamiti. Somebody said that for a small little activity, it is possible that there is no purpose. You are just doing gardening, etc., without any particular purpose. But nobody undertakes such tremendous, stupendous activity without a purpose. You can't build a factory, no reason at all. Why are you doing such a huge undertaking? Nobody will do that. Similarly, Ishvara has created a whole universe. It's a stupendous activity and it should have some purpose. Iti vikalpya adye hetu sadbhave pragukta shruti nyaya avirodhat na anumana pravrutti iti abhiprayat. No, sorry. Tatra asmad drishtyava tasyaha gurutara sambhava samrambhatvam ishvara drishtyava iti. You tell us. So you are imagining Ishvara also like you do things, Kimiha kinkaya sakhalu kimupayas tribhuvanam kimadharo dhata srujati kimupadani atarkya ishvarye tvai. Ishvara is atarkyam. You cannot apply the rules that apply to you to Ishvara. So says, asmad drishtya. From our standpoint, do you say that there must be a purpose in creating such stupendous creation, or from standpoint of Ishvara are you saying it, Vikalpa adye hetu sadbhavevi pragukta shruti nyaya virodhat na anumana pravrutti asmad drishtya. Yes. That from our standpoint the hetu is there, that there should be a purpose. But pragukta shruti nyaya virodhat, but we quoted shruti and we quoted nyaya also, and therefore that anumana does not come into play. Dvitiyam nirasyati ishvara drishtya, that is refuted here. Yadyapi, the Bhashyakara says, Yadyapi अस्माकं इयं जगद्बिंब विरचना गुरुतर संरंभा इव आभाते तथापि परमेश्वरस्य लीला एव केवला इयं अपरिमित शक्तित्वात्. यद्यपि अस्माकं यम जगद्बिंब विरचना गुरुदर संरंभा एव आभाते. To us it looks like it's a stupendous task. This whole sphere of the universe creation is a stupendous task from our standpoint. Tathapi, even then, Parameshwarasya Leela eva kevalayam. But for Parameshwara, this is merely a pastime, merely a sport. Why? Aparimita Shaktitvat. Because Parameshwara is possessed of the infinite power. So we are possessed of insignificant power. To us this looks like a stupendous task. So sometimes some people are such, that like Mahatma Gandhi, he just said that day, that one in his South Africa in a Tolstoy farm, He used to carry all kinds of tools in his pockets, when walking around in the farm, in the ashram. So one day he took some log of wood, took his chisel and hammer and all these things, and he started working on the wood. Worked for 9 hours constantly and created a whole wooden rack. To us it would be a stupendous task. How can you do this? He did it. Getting freedom for India was a stupendous task, So many great people came and sacrificed themselves. And for what reason? They didn't accomplish anything, poor fellows. So, and what is it, Veer Savarkar and such great people were there. But they killed somebody here and murdered somebody there, and that's about all the accomplishment they had. Of course, they themselves were very powerful people. But stupendous task was accomplished. Ishvara Dushtya Leela Eva Kevala Ayam. This is merely a sport or merely a pastime from the standpoint of Ishvara. Aparimita Shaktitvad, because Ishvara is possessed of infinite power. Says Ratnaprabha, Alpa pravrutte api phalam vachyam loke tatha darshanaditi. Let alone stupendous activity, even for a small activity also, alpa pravrutte, so which we are capable of, phalam vachyam, there also we have to accept that there has to be some agenda, some purpose. Loke tatha darshanad, because this is what we find, that nobody engages into even a small activity unless a personal purpose is to be served. Ityadi tarkasya agama badhamaha. That tarka or the reasoning or rule is contradicted by Shruti. Yadi nama iti. Sabhashakara says, Yadi nama loke लीलास्वपि किंचित सूक्ष्मं प्रयोजनम् उत्प्रेक्ष्येत तथापि नैव अत्र किंचित् प्रयोजनम् उत्प्रेक्षितुं शक्यते आप्तकामश्रुतेः. यदि नाम granted that loke lila swapi kinti sukshmam prayojanam utpreksheta. You might imagine some subtle purpose behind even a pastime. That you go for a walk, there also you want some relaxation. You do gardening, there also you want some enjoyment. So, in our day-to-day life, we may see some purpose even in this small activity. May be granted. Tathapi, but that rule does not apply. So, Patarika Ishwaryam, whose Ishwari is Atarkyam, whose glory or the power or the greatness is beyond reasoning. Nivatra kinchit prayojanam utprekshitum shakyate. In case of Brahman, you cannot imagine any purpose. Why? Aptakama Shrutehe. The Shruti says, Aptakamaha. Akamaha, Nishkamaha, Aptakamaha, Atmakamaha. So Brahman is Atmakamaha. There is no kamana left. All kamanas are all satisfied. So you can't find an individual like that. So what you say applies to individual having desires, but Brahman doesn't have. That's upadhi. There's always a purpose in doing everything because person is incomplete. There is a dissatisfaction within. And that's what prompts a person to do things, having a purpose. Having a purpose behind doing things, that is not in the case of Brahman. Or further, किंचित स्वकीयम परकीयम वा इत्यर्थः न किंचित प्रयोजन उत्प्रेक्षितम स्वकीयम परकीयम वा not for himself not for anybody else also प्रयोजन अभावे वा इत्यादि न उक्तम प्रत्यह नापीति in the earlier sutra it was said प्रयोजन अभाव वा कि प्रयोजन अभावे वा it should have been प्रयोजन अभाव प्रवृत्ति अभाव अपि स्यात् there is no prayojana there is no pravrutti that was said earlier that is being replied here said that if there is a mad person then you find him doing it but Brahman is not mad it is sarvajnam so that is replied here Bhashyakara says napi apravrittihi उन्मत्त प्रवृत्तिर्वा सृष्टि श्रुतेः सर्वज्ञ श्रुतेश्च so प्रयोजन अभावे प्रवृत्ति अभाव says no you cannot say there is no pravrutti because सृष्टि श्रुति Upanishad describes the creation on the part of Brahman so you cannot say Brahman does not do so just because there is no prayojanam, there should be no pravrutti, that does not apply to Brahman. Even though Brahman is no prayojanam, pravrutti is there because Shruti says Brahman creates the universe. Or unmatta pravrutti, another reason was given there. Unmatta pravrutti. A madman is seen to engage in activity without any purpose for himself, but Brahman is not unmattam, is not mad or intoxicated. Sarvajna Shrutescha, because Brahman is not apramatam, Sarvajnam. It is omniscient and therefore it cannot be intoxicated, mad, or it can be indifferent, it can be, so cannot be incongruent. Say Ratnaprabha, Srushti Shrutehe apravrittirnasti. Because Upanishad says Brahman creates, therefore there apravritti or lack of activity cannot be in Brahman. Sarvajñatva Shrutehe unmattata nasti hiti vibhaga. And because Brahman is Sarvajñam, means always all-knowing. Therefore there cannot be ever indifferent, inadvertent. There cannot be pramada or unmada in Brahman ever. So in the universe, not only for creation, for sustenance also you find nature is just functioning. In a precise order. Everything functions as allotted, as determined. Nothing ever, even atom also doesn't take any rest. Everything is constantly serving the purpose. Yadi hem na varteyam jadu karmani atandritah. Without a moment of respite, if I were not active, then the world also will stop activity. Says Ratnava, Swapna Srushtivat Asyaha Srushtihe Maya Matratvat Na Phala Apeksha iti. Final stroke. Swapna Srushtivat, like the creation of a dream, Asya Srushte Maya Matratvad, just as dream is merely a projection, this universe also is a projection. Why are you breaking your head after this? Na phala apeksha, therefore there is no expectation of any prayojanam or purpose. Nacha iyam, Bhashyakara says, Nacha iyam paramatha vishaya srushti shrutihi avidya kalpita nama rupa vyavahara gocharatvat brahmatma bhava pratipadana paratvacha ityetadapi naiva vismartavyam. Just a reminder, remember this. Nachayam paramatha vishaya srushti shrutihi. When the Shruti describes creation, don't think that the Shruti is describing a real creation. Paramartha Vishaya, it does not mean that creation is absolute reality. Avidya kalpita nam rupa vyavahar gocharatvat. What is subject matter of the Srushti Shruti? Avidya kalpita nam rupa vyavahara. It's only the transaction with the name and form which are only creation of ignorance, and that is subject matter of this Srushti Shruti or the passages describing creation. Says Ratnava, Nacha Nishphala Srushti Shrutinam Anarthakyam. Then why does, if the Srushti is not real and Shruti doesn't mean that there is a real creation, then why does it bother to talk about creation at all? And not only it talks about creation, it sometimes elaborately talks about creation. Why does it do that? Nacha Nishphala Srushtinam Anarthakyam. Then it is no more pramanam. It is true, it is arthavada, but has its purpose or its intention with reference to what? Brahmatmaikam says, Saphala Brahmadisheshatvena. It is arthavada which serves the purpose of creating the dhi or the knowledge of Brahman, which is one and non-dual, resulting into moksha, Saphala. Saphala Brahmadisheshatvena Arthavattvadi Uktam. This has been said earlier also, that the purpose of Srushti is for the purpose of creating a knowledge of non-dual Brahman, that's all. Upadeshat ayam vadaha jnate dvaitam na vidyate. It is only for the knowledge this vada is there. Once you know, then there is no duality. Iti na vismartavyam. There also you should not forget, so Bhashyakara said, Brahmatma bhava pratipadana paratvacha. First of all, Shruti describes the creation which is a product of ignorance, the name and form, product of ignorance, doesn't have any reality. And secondly, the purpose of describing the creation is to lead the Shrota, the listener or the Jignasu to the knowledge of Brahman, one without a second, because Brahman cannot be non-dual unless the creation of name and form is mithya. So that is what Shruti wants to convey, that this is maya matram, it is mithya, and therefore even the apparent multiplicity of name and form does not create duality in Brahman. There is unity in diversity. So Brahmatma bhava pratipadana paratvaj. Ultimately Shruti wants to assert that you are Brahman. Whether anything else is Brahman doesn't matter. Tattvamasi. You are Brahman because you have a problem. Nobody else has a problem. So Jagat doesn't have a problem. Name and form doesn't have a problem. You have a problem. So ultimate purpose is Brahmatma bhava. That Atma is Brahman. To reveal the nature of the self as Brahman, that is the primary purpose. So Paratvat, Shruti is devoted to revealing the identity between Atma and Brahma, and that is the purpose of this Srushti Shruti. Iti api naiva vismartam. That also should not be forgotten. When you are asking all this question, you forget. You forget what we have told you earlier, and you keep on raising questions. So remember what we told you earlier there. Then also these questions have no scope. Okay, all right. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Krutau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Gururatmedi मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। हरिः ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः। हरिः ॐ।